My name is Ziad Mukhtar. I'm a partner at AddVenture. For those of you who don't know AddVenture, we manage almost a $50 million fund. We've been investing since 2004. We have over 20 companies in our portfolio. Actually, if I'm to make a pitch, two of the companies who presented today, Dr. Bridge and Cyware, are companies we invested in. Very proud of those. Fowry, the bill collection company, is one of our investments. Again, we typically invest in startups that have some traction, maybe some revenue, and our tickets are typically in the range. The beginning ticket is $500,000 up to $1 million. If you have an interesting idea, please find me and tell me about it.
My name is Wael Amin. I recently joined as a partner in Sawari Ventures. Sawari is actually an ecosystem. It includes Flat Six Labs, which is an accelerator. They now run in Cairo, Abu Dhabi, and Jeddah. It includes the Greek campus, which is where we are today, and it includes Sawari Venture Fund, which is a $50 million fund focused on Egypt and North Africa. We look for tickets between just under $1 million to $2 and $2.5 million. The focus is technology, media, and energy.
I'm Mohammed Al Ayouti. I founded and I manage Vodafone Ventures in Egypt. Vodafone Ventures is Egypt's only corporate venture capital fund. Was founded in 2011. We made 8 investments to date. 3 of our startups are here today. One of them is Eventus, and 2 more are pitching. I will not say the name now for the jury, not to get biased against us. And we're a slightly smaller ticket because we are an earlier stage than Sawari and AddVenture. But actually, we've co-invested together with Sawari and with AddVenture in our portfolio companies. We're focused on TMT, so that's technology, mobile, and telecom. And the closer to telecom it is, the happier we are. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so keep the mics. So let me ask you this question. I mean, this is an up and coming developing area, and it's valuations are low, yes, for companies because the exits are few and far in between. So as investors, how do you look for exits? Like what turns you on about an investment? How do you think? Does it have to be $1 billion market? Does it have to go global? Are you okay with local? Why don't we start from this direction and talk a little bit about that?
So we haven't been thinking about exits really. It's a very young market. We understand that it's longer term than the hit and run operation that some people think venture capital is. What helped us as Vodafone is that we went into these startups knowing that we can take some time until they mature. We know our startups are still not making money, so that will take time until they prove themselves, until they start becoming profitable, and then start thinking of bigger ticket valuations, and then potentially exit. What helped us was Vodafone is a big business, so the scale of the operation next to the mother company is acceptable. I mean, 20 million pounds of a first tranche of the fund is acceptable next to a 12, 13 billion pound operation.
Very good. Wael?
So we actually look for companies with kind of growth potential. So we're looking at companies that can generate really this 10x type return, and we take a risk on that. And some of the companies will get there either by aggressively expanding in a local market or by going global and pursuing a more global opportunity. And some companies will just not get there. And this is really part of the venture capital equation. We are encouraged by the exit momentum. We think that there is more interest in the region. We think that the pieces are falling into place. So we're optimistic about seeing more and more exits going forward.
I think the first thing that attracts us to an opportunity is the market. I think how big the market is. That's the first question we try to answer. Would this market be afford hundreds of millions of pounds in revenue if we're in Egypt, right? And then we think if there's a structural deficiency in that market, if you're coming and solving a problem that could turn this market around, make a huge shift in the way people in this industry are operating. And typically the entrepreneur is the one who shows us that. He just shows us something that everyone is missing. It's not easy to solve, and he doesn't come with a incredible solution that will solve it. He just comes with a specific attempt to solve this market. What we need to believe in, to kind of go with the entrepreneur after this market when only what he has is an initial suggestion of a solution, is the team. Whether this team or this team with some elements that we can complement. If we believe that the market is huge, there is a structural inefficiency and technology can have a crack at it, and the team, as it is today or as we can supplement it, is strong enough, then we invest in that company.
And you're all okay, and we can just jump in at this point. So you're all okay with companies focusing just on Egypt or just the region, or how do you think about country versus region versus global?
Yeah, so the view is, again, to look at the market opportunity, right? And there are some huge opportunities in Egypt. I mean, there are some huge opportunities waiting to be tapped just in the local market. And it's not, it's not hard to see whether it's in energy, whether it's in education, there's just healthcare. All of these are large, very large markets, and Egypt is a populous country, right? So it's by no means too small to support a growth startup. Having said that, it's also attractive when there is a company that captures a market opportunity that has global growth potential and entrepreneurs that are ambitious and capable to go after that opportunity.
From the corporate perspective?
Well, we share the same view as well. Obviously, as corporate, as a company with 40 million customers, we think of the local market as a huge opportunity, and how can we help our startup, our investment, scale to reach those customers, if of course it's relevant to the mass market. Having said that, putting the VC hat on, obviously, just like Wael, we'd be very happy if it scales regionally because of the shared language, or of course if the company has global growth potential.
The one thing I add is I think and that was mentioned in some of the presentations earlier today. I think it's important that the startup has a good hold on the user they are innovating for. That's the most important thing. If you're close to the users, whether they're Egyptians or kind of they could be anywhere else in the world, but that you can build this startup alongside the users. If someone comes and pitches to us an idea that, I think the example that was giving, the procurement in the US idea, right? That we will not back that. If someone says it's people in Egypt are facing a problem kind of playing games on their mobile, and this is a problem that everyone would face, and he's working with users around them to solve it, we'll go for that. So I think the most important thing is that you're solving a problem for a user that you can interact with, you can get feedback from, versus just inventing for someone who's 6,000 miles away or something.
Gotcha. So it's actually, unlike a lot of what I'm hearing, unlike a lot of markets that are outside of the big European capitals outside of London, Silicon Valley, is that you're actually very much okay with or prefer actually local solutions where the companies can be very close to the problem. Is that right?
In our case, that's been most the startups that we funded, and those startups are startups we can help. It helps if the problem they're solving can be replicated, the solution can be replicated elsewhere. That makes it more attractive. But initially, we need to feel that they have an access to this user, they know this user, they meet this user. It's not just sitting somewhere else that they don't get feedback from.
I think there's a difference between developed markets serving other developed markets, and in our case, a developing market that is underserved today. So the developing market requires service from these startups, and then there's the occasional company that will want to go to the bigger markets as well. So I think that in terms of prioritization, I think like Ziad said, the customers know sorry, the entrepreneur knows the customer and then can serve them directly from being here.
Very good. So do you take inspiration from any other up-and-coming or maybe slightly ahead economies or ecosystems for startups? What are some of the things that you've learned from some of the ecosystems around that you think are applicable here in the near future?
So I think there are obviously many good examples of very successful ecosystems. Silicon Valley is one of them. The Israeli ecosystem is another. The Irish ecosystem is also picking up pace. And in all of the successful cases, there has been really close work between universities and research institutions, entrepreneurs, VC firms. There have been players at the different stages for investment. So this is really what the different pieces of the puzzle that need to come and play to achieve this type of success.
As far as the geopolitical situation that's in the country, in the region, that financial markets usually flip out and they're scared of these kind of things. But it seems like you guys are very relaxed, and you keep investing in the country and the region. Talk a little bit about that. How do you think about that? Because coming from outside, knowing some of these areas, the perception is American VCs would be very scared to come here. How do you see it, and what keeps you up at night, and what keeps you sleeping at night?
So I'll be very honest. I think it's difficult right now to pitch to American VCs to come and invest in Egypt. I think it's difficult to pitch to American VCs to invest in many places in the world, not just the place that has the current geopolitical complexities that we're living in. I think what we're finding right now is there is capital coming from different sources to this market for now. I think it's what's been happening geopolitically and the delay in the economic development is actually creating a lot of held back demand that actually creates opportunities. And I think it's the entrepreneurs who go in this time when basic cost of investment is much less. They'll end up in 2 or 3 years in way better position and capturing huge markets. And that's what we try to fund eventually. And when we get out of this geopolitical problem, I think then we'll go back and talk to US VCs.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that.
Yeah, it's fine.
I think innovation, right? Innovation and intellectual capital, intellectual property. I think this is really central to answering this question, because innovation and intellectual property kind of really transcends, in this day and age, it transcends geographies, right? You talk to a VC in any of these countries, and if you have an innovation, if you have intellectual capital, it's immediately visible, and you can easily see how this can be taken and moved around. I think the geopolitical risks affect maybe firms that haven't done enough in terms of innovation and differentiation to really create that value that transcends the geographical boundaries.
I would like to add one thing. Looking at what happened, starting with the revolution 2011, the job market, the traditional job market was slowing down, and many of the entrepreneurs that started off as existential entrepreneurs. They're just doing this because this is the only thing they can do for the time being, and this really helped get the first few hundred entrepreneurs into the ecosystem. And probably today, with the geopolitical complexities, if that impacts the economy or impacts the job market, then you'll find people going out there and trying their own thing because they have the luxury of not having a job.
Gotcha. Now, what do you think? You know the market and how it's developing, and it's definitely not Silicon Valley, and it's got its own, its own needs, and local entrepreneurs are going to be solving these problems. In each one of your cases, what segments are you most excited about, or where do you think are the biggest opportunities that are ripe in Egypt right now? Is it e-commerce? Is it B2B? What are the things that are developing that you're seeing that are interesting waves locally?
So I think there are more than one interesting segment. I think the one that excites me most is actually platforms, and mostly platforms that kind of try to be to change the way industries deal with each other. So a platform that automates the F&B industry and connects the different players. A platform for the healthcare industry that connects the different players. I think in the interesting thing in emerging markets and developing markets is there's very little that has been done, that these are to great extent empty markets on different levels of the value chain of each industry. And I think with the way the internet is now available, whether it's by mobile, by broadband, or whatever, every industry there is an opportunity for an entrepreneur to go and create a platform that becomes the information highway of that industry. And whenever someone comes and points out a specific sector and does their homework and understanding that sector, and it's a strong team, we're very interested to kind of go at it. That, to me, that's one of the most interesting spaces.
Yeah, so for us, the real challenge is really to pare down the number of areas that we look at, because there's so much exciting opportunities happening. We see this trend where you have these global mega trends, these innovations that happen across the globe, right? Things like big data, self-driving vehicles, Internet of Things, and the list goes on. And then those big trends, they meet some very important regional and local dynamics, right? You talk about an explosion in internet and mobile penetration. You talk about a young generation, up and coming, very young population in the region that today is more risk-taking, that today is more technology savvy, and that has really almost, the region has an insatiable consumer demand, right? There's just so much happening. So when these forces meet each other, you have an explosion of opportunities. So for us, the problem has been really to stay focused and say, okay, we're not going to look at this now, and we're not going to look at this now, and just going to stay focused to make it manageable.
I think we're looking at. I agree with Ziad, with both of you, but I agree with Ziad on the platforms component, especially if you can affect the value chain of an industry, of how it's been doing business traditionally. This is a huge opportunity, and this very little has been done, like Wael said, in our markets in that space. Looking horizontally across, there's also opportunities in e-commerce, and also with the explosion of internet on the phone. Huge opportunities for solutions that either for consumers or enterprises that use the phone as a means. This is for us very exciting as well.
Very good. Now, when you're raising your next fund and you're talking to your LPs, to your investors, what are the top 3 things that you're going to try to sell them about your next fund? These might be a little secret, but if you want to share, because this is insight for the entrepreneurs in the room. Obviously, VCs, they invest other people's money, and they have to go fundraise on their own. And they have to lay out their strategy for this fund for the next 10 years. And if in your case, you're all investing in Egypt, so what are some of the things that you tell your investors, or will be telling your investors in the near future, about why they should continue investing in your funds and in Egypt?
Essentially, we start off with the macro of this region, right? And the macro of this region is it's a young population that is growing, that is tech savvy, that has spending power, a growing middle class. So these are really at a macro level, when you take a 10-year horizon or a 7-year horizon, what investors are looking for. And then you combine that with, in Egypt's case, the availability of talent, right? The really incredible amount of talent. And it's not just technical talent, but today there is more and more entrepreneurship, there is more and more risk-taking, and you're starting to see entrepreneurs who have gone through several generations of companies. This is their second or third startup. So you have this maturing ecosystem. And you put these together and it becomes an attractive story. This big regional opportunity across the Middle East and North Africa with huge spending power and the potential for startups out of Egypt with access to talent, with access to this ecosystem to take advantage of that. So that's what we really try to convey.
Very good.
I think I agree with Wael's point, the first point, that just they need to understand the macro situation and the macro potential. I think the other thing that investors, particularly those that are not in Egyptian investors, is just to show them success stories. Your success stories, companies that you are able to build, and companies that are kind of growing with exponential patterns and tapping huge markets. They need to see those examples. They need to see that you're able to kind of help those companies and create those companies. And I think the next thing is to show them how many other opportunities that just a single person like a fund can point out. So imagine if all the entrepreneurs and all the talent is putting their heads, how many opportunities that they can come up with. So to show them that this is still from an information perspective, from a tech perspective, is very underdeveloped. I think, and this speaks more to the initial point that the focus is more on the opportunities in this market and similar markets, rather than just global tech idea or something. And that would be the focus of our pitch.
Well, being a corporate VC, it's a different story. But if I was in their situation, talking to my management, it'll be obviously evidenced by numbers, looking at how many startups have either succeeded or exited successfully. I mean, success is a very broad range, but showing how the success is happening, showing the appetite generally of investors coming in and so on. So proving that we're not in this alone, there's someone else doing it, someone else is equally insane, so maybe they were all doing something right. And the third thing I would say is, because many of these products are consumer products that probably these people interact with on a daily basis or in certain situations. So I'll give evidence with, you've been to that place, you've tried this iPad on the table. Well, this is one of these companies. So it just proves that these things really work. It's not just a fancy gimmick.
Very good. Now, if this is a normal tech conference, as soon as you get off the stage, there's going to be a group of people that want to give you a quick pitch, right? So how many in the audience are pitching all day, every day? All right, so at least a few. So now is your opportunity. We're kind of wrapping up, so we'll make this the last question. Kind of very quickly, what's your checklist in your mind when you're listening to a pitch? What are you looking for specifically for you, for your fund, for your background? What are the type of things so we can help better match the ones pitching, and they'll tell you what you want to hear?
Yeah, so I mean, the way I look at it personally, raising a round is a transformation process, right? So you're taking a market opportunity and a team, and you're adding capital to that, and then you're doing something with that. So it's how you are putting these pieces of the equation together and where that takes you. So I think the main thing we look at is someone who's able to articulate the story with clarity, that this is where we are, this is who we are, this is the opportunity, this is what we need, and this is how we're going to use those resources, and this is where it's going to take us. So it's not complicated, but it's really, I mean, a transformational process. And very often, if it's a Series A or a growth round, it's going to transform the company. It's going to change completely the way the company is run. It's going to change the resources available to you. So it has to be clear that the team understands and appreciates this transformation process and has a plan on how they're going to execute it.
The first thing that I would request from everyone who approaches an investor is just, first of all, do your homework on that investor. Understand what stage they invest in. If you can, talk to companies they invested in. Do your homework. That's the first thing. The worst thing is someone who comes to an investor who invests in seed stage, ask them for a much bigger round, or the other way around. Just understand what's the type of investor you're talking to. In our case, we invest in Series A, which means that you already have been maybe raised some angel money, maybe had a seed round. Now, for me, given that you should have done that, and supposedly you've done that. The most important thing is that by now, you know the problem you're solving more than anyone else. You are the expert. You have done all your homework. You have researched your market. You know your user. And to the extent that you bring insight that the layman, the intelligent, smart person will not have by themselves, that shows me that you unlocked something. So you need to really understand your domain very well. What an entrepreneur does very well is they pick a very specific thing and they know like no one else. And you should know what that thing is, and you bring value to the investors when you present this to them. So think what is your specific point of expertise? What have you unlocked that you're coming to tell this investor about? That's the most important thing.
When somebody's pitching his startup to us, because we're in a slightly earlier stage, so we look at some more fundamental issues. We look at does the CEO know what he's going after? What about the rest of the team? Are they all aligned on the same strategy? We look at the quality of the team in terms of their competence. We look at how big is the potential opportunity, because they might have not really figured out their product market fit at the moment, but do we believe that this is going to get there? Yes or no? Usually it's not a running business at the moment, so there's no revenue, so he probably doesn't have the finance skills and so on. Does the CEO know that he has these gaps, or is he just sure that he knows everything? These are usually like big filters, and then we look at the opportunity itself and see if that will work or not, and of course how it aligns with the company strategy.
Very good. So what I heard, something most consistent is team. Everybody's looking at team first and foremost. Yes. So consistent with that, think about that and think about what you're planning to do and where you're going. It should be something that you're an expert in.
Can I just add a couple points of what we don't like to see? One of them is entrepreneurs who say, or come to us and say, I'm the CEO of this company, but I have another job, and I'm the co-founder of a third company. Usually, we just filter these without even replying to the pitch. This is very common. If he's not committed before he starts, then maybe we don't want to commit to that.
If you don't believe in yourself, how are you going to get somebody else to believe?
Exactly. That's one thing. The other thing that maybe it's a bit personal, but usually the opportunity says that it starts from the top down, saying it's a market of $10 billion, and if we get to 0.001%, that's I don't know how big. No, usually we want to see how you're going to get to that number, whatever the number is. But don't start by saying it's a big market, so if I do anything, I'm going to succeed. Because usually these people don't succeed. Yeah,
you want bottoms-up business model calculation.
Exactly, more than top-down.
Yeah. Please.
One point. I think one message I want to leave with you guys is that entrepreneurship is not easy. It's not an easy path. It's a very exciting path, but it's not an easy one. So if you think it will be very easy to go and raise money, build a product, understand your customer, get traction, big mistake, okay? Think again. Entrepreneurship is harder than going and working for the biggest multinational and getting a really well-paying job, right? It's tough, and that's why there's the big prize at the end, right? So if you're thinking it's easy, you're in the wrong place. At the same time, if you're finding it very difficult, don't panic because it's difficult, right? That's perfectly fine. It's a difficult ride. It's not necessarily that you're doing something wrong. Of course, talk to people, but just remember it's not an easy path. That's it.
Very good. Wael, do you want to add final thought?
So I'll just expand a little bit on something that Mohammed said. It's a bad sign when the entrepreneur is doing a million things. It's also a bad sign when the company is doing a million things. So if it's a company that is trying to do 4 products and 3 services and do that across 3 countries and it's still a 2-person startup, then it becomes obvious that there is no way they can find the management focus to be successful. So before you reach an investor, my recommendation is to really just think very seriously about what your focus is, trim everything that's not part of that, and just go with that one story.
You're good. Team and focus. Gentlemen, with that, thank you very much. You're doing great work here. We appreciate it, and everybody here appreciates it. Thank you.